The Awakening Fury. July 6, 1944. 22:15 hours. 12,000 feet above the Pas-de-Calais countryside, France. The Lancaster's engines thrum in your ears like a relentless heartbeat, vibrating through the cold metal fuselage as Squadron Leader Leonard Cheshire banks his heavy bomber into position. Below, the moonlit fields of occupied France stretch out like a shadowed quilt, punctured by the faint glimmers of anti-aircraft searchlights probing the night sky. You can almost feel the chill seeping through the perspex canopy, the sharp tang of cordite from the gunners' turrets mixing with the sweat of anticipation. Cheshire's voice crackles over the intercom. "Steady now, lads. Target in sight. Mimoyec's fortress. Make this one count." The bomb bay doors creak open, exposing the massive 12,000-pound tall boy nestled inside, a seismic monster designed by Barnes Wallis himself, engineered to burrow deep before detonating like the wrath of the gods. As the navigator calls out corrections, the crew holds their breath. Flak bursts bloom around them, jagged flowers of fire and shrapnel that rattle the airframe. One shell winds past the starboard wing, close enough to taste the acrid smoke. Bombs away! The tall boy tumbles free, whistling downward toward the hidden colossus below, a Nazi supergun fortress that could have turned London into a smoking ruin. But how did it come to this? A desperate race against time, born from the mind of a Führer clinging to delusions of victory. Rewind the clock to the sweltering summer of 1943, when the tides of war were shifting inexorably against the Third Reich. In the fortified depths of the Wolfschanze, Hitler's East Prussian headquarters, the air hangs heavy with the scent of pine and paranoia. Adolf Hitler paces the concrete bunker, his face gaunt under the harsh electric lights, eyes blazing with the fire of a man who sees enemies in every shadow. It's August 18, 1943, the morning after the RAF's devastating raid on Peenemünde. Reports flood in, hangars obliterated, scientists scattered, the V-2 rocket program, that gleaming promise of terror from the skies, crippled in a single night. Hitler slams his fist on the map table, scattering pins like fallen soldiers. "The British dogs! They think they can halt our vengeance?" His voice echoes off the walls, a mix of rage and desperation. Albert Speer, the Reich's armaments minister, stands rigidly at attention, his sharp features betraying none of the exhaustion from sleepless nights overseeing the war machine. Speer seizes the moment. He's heard whispers of a radical design from engineer August Koinders, a multi-chambered cannon that could hurl shells across the channel at unprecedented speeds. No need for finicky rockets, just raw mechanical fury. "Mein Führer," Speer interjects smoothly. "There is another way, a supergun buried deep in French soil, impervious to bombing. It could rain death on London, 600 shells an hour, day and night." Hitler's head snaps up, his mustache twitching as the idea takes root. You can picture the gleam in his eyes, that messianic certainty flaring anew. "Build it," he orders, his voice low and final. "Spare no resources. This will be our England gun, the V-3. It will break their spirit when all else fails." The directive ripples out like a shockwave. By September, Organization Todt, the Reich's Slave Labor Engineer Corps, mobilizes thousands. French soil near the village of Mimoyec, just 109 miles from London, is chosen for its chalky bedrock, perfect for carving out a subterranean fortress. Totes overseers, whips in hand, drive waves of forced laborers, POWs from the Eastern Front, conscripted locals, and hollow-eyed prisoners from concentration camps. The air fills with the ceaseless grind of excavators and jackhammers, dust choking the lungs as tunnels burrow deeper than any bomb could reach, or so they believe. Koinders, the brilliant but beleaguered designer from Röchling Stahlwerk, arrives on site with blueprints clutched under his arm. His V-3 isn't just a gun, it's a marvel of sequential detonation. A 500-foot barrel, angled at 50 degrees, lined with side chambers that fire booster charges in rapid succession, propelling a finned dart shell to Mach 3. No recoil issues, no complex guidance, just sheer velocity punching through the atmosphere. It will hit London in under 2 minutes, Koinders boasts to his team, sketching trajectories on makeshift tables lit by flickering bulbs. But doubts linger in the shadows. Prototypes at Hillersleben proving grounds have cracked under pressure, shells veering wildly. Yet Hitler's order brokes no delay. As autumn rains turn the site into a muddy quagmire, the scale becomes staggering. 2 parallel shafts, each 100 feet deep, house clusters of 5 gun tubes apiece, 10 in total, with plans for more. Concrete pours like gray blood, hardening into domes thick enough to shrug off conventional bombs. Slave workers toil in 12-hour shifts, their bodies breaking under the weight of steel rails and explosive charges. Whispers of sabotage echo through the tunnels. A misplaced charge here, a weakened support there. But SS guards patrol with Mauser rifles, their boots echoing like death knells. By early 1944, the fortress takes shape, a buried behemoth humming with activity. Electric trolleys shuttle ammunition crates along underground rails, while ventilation fans battle the stifling heat from welding torches. Koinders paces the galleries, barking orders at technicians fine-tuning the ignition sequences. Faster! The Führer demands results! The promise is intoxicating. A barrage that could pulverize London's docks, shatter morale, force Churchill to sue for peace. But Allied reconnaissance planes circle overhead, their cameras clicking like accusatory eyes. And then the first tremors of doubt. In November 1943, RAF mosquitoes streak in low, unleashing high-explosive payloads that crater the surface but barely scratch the depths. The workers huddle in bunkers as sirens wail, emerging to repair the damage under floodlights. They don't know what we're building, an overseer sneers, but Koinders feels the noose tightening. Speer wires urgent pleas for more anti-aircraft guns, more camouflage nets draped over the scarred earth. Hitler, back in Berlin, pores over progress reports by lamplight, his hands trembling from the strains of command. The V-3 will turn the war, he mutters to his inner circle, ignoring the crumbling fronts in Italy and Russia. But as winter grips Europe, the Allies close in. Ultra-intercepts crack German codes, revealing Mimox as a priority target. RAF Barnes-Wallis refines his tallboy, an earthquake bomb that penetrates before exploding, designed to collapse structures from within. The race intensifies. Engineers work feverishly to assemble the first gun tube, testing firing mechanisms in sealed chambers. The air reeks of gun oil and fear. Will it fire before the bombs fall? Or will the England gun become just another tomb in the Reich's graveyard of dreams? The race beneath the earth. Spring 1944. Deep inside Mimiex, the air is thick with diesel fumes and the metallic bite of fresh-cut steel. You're standing on a narrow catwalk, 100 feet underground, watching as sweating workers in striped prison uniforms wrestle a 130-meter gun tube into place. The barrel gleams under harsh floodlights. longer than a U-boat, its smooth bore lined with 32 side chambers ready to ignite in perfect sequence. Engineer August Koinders wipes soot from his glasses and shouts over the clang of hammers. "Align it to the millimeter. London is waiting." Up on the surface, the disguise is almost perfect. Camouflage nets drape over fake farmhouses, and local French villagers are told it's just another coastal battery. But Allied photo reconnaissance Spitfires keep coming back. Flight Lieutenant Tony Hill snaps roll after roll of film from 30,000 feet, noticing fresh concrete pours and mysterious railway spurs snaking into the hillside. Back at Medmenham, the interpreters lean over stereoscopes and trace the outlines with red grease pencils. "This isn't a battery," one whispers. "It's something monstrous." By May, the first full-scale gun is ready for testing. In a sealed gallery, Koinders loads a 310-pound dart shell. Technicians huddle behind blast shields. The countdown begins. Ignition. A deafening roar echoes through the tunnels as booster charges fire one after another. Boom, 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 like a giant machine gun inside a mountain. The shell screams out at 3,300 miles per hour, punching a hole clean through the atmosphere. Cheers erupt. Koinders cables Berlin. Successful firing. Range confirmed. London in reach. For a fleeting moment, hope surges through the fortress. Workers dare to dream the war might still turn. Hitler receives the news in the Berghof, high in the Bavarian Alps. Sunlight streams through tall windows as he studies the trajectory maps spread across a wooden table. Eva Braun pours coffee nearby, but the Führer barely notices. "Excellent," he murmurs, tracing the arc from Mimiex to Trafalgar Square with a trembling finger. "Begin full ammunition production. When the invasion comes, this gun will greet them with fire." He orders Speer to divert steel and explosives from the Atlantic Wall. Priority absolute. Even the V-2 site at Peenemünde must wait. Down in the tunnels, the pace becomes brutal. Slave laborers collapse from exhaustion, their bodies dragged away by silent guards. New prisoners arrive daily. Belgian resistance fighters, Polish officers, French Jews, chained together and marched into the depths. The ventilation system groans, unable to clear the choking dust. Men cough blood, but the whips keep cracking. One prisoner, a former mining engineer named Marcel Dupont, secretly sketches the layout on cigarette papers, planning to smuggle them out. Every shift feels like a countdown to either liberation or death. Meanwhile, in England, Barnes Wallis refuses to sleep. At his drawing board in Burhill, the lanky designer hunches over blueprints of the tall boy. Conventional bombs bounce off Mimiex like raindrops. He needs an earthquake. The new bomb is a monster, 22 feet long, aerodynamically shaped to spin as it falls, with a reinforced nose and delayed fuse. It must burrow 30 meters before detonating, he tells his team, eyes bloodshot. Test drops over the New Forest shake the ground so hard that horses bolt for miles. Wallace smiles grimly. That'll do. June 6th, 1944. D-Day. As Allied troops storm Normandy beaches 150 miles away, panic ripples through Mimiex. SS Major Karl Müller storms into the control room, face flushed. "The invasion! Accelerate everything!" Workers are forced into 18-hour shifts. Gun tubes are loaded for the first live barrage against England, even though the aiming mechanisms are still uncalibrated. Koinders protests, "We need another month." Müller slams the table. "You have days. The Führer demands blood." That same week, RAF intelligence finally cracks the secret. Ultra decrypts reveal the codename Hochdruckpumpe, high pressure pump. Photos confirm the angled shafts. Air Marshal Arthur Harris slams his fist in delight. "We'll bury the bastards in their own hole." No 617 Squadron, the famous dam busters, is pulled from rest and given one mission: destroy Mimiex before a single shell lands on London. Squadron leader Leonard Cheshire volunteers to mark the target himself, flying low in a Mustang to drop incendiaries right on the vents. July 4th. American heavy bombers hit first. 72 B-17s dropping conventional 1,000-pounders. Explosions rock the hillside. Concrete domes crack, but the tunnels hold. Workers emerge from shelters, coughing, staring at the craters. "They still don't know how deep we are," an overseer laughs nervously. Coinders isn't so sure. He orders emergency repairs, welding teams working by torchlight as another alert sounds. 2 days later, the sky darkens again. Mosquito pathfinders streak overhead, dropping flares that bathe the site in ghostly red light. Cheshire's voice crackles over the radio. "Target identified. Good luck, boys." Lancasters of 617 Squadron roll in, one by one. The ground crews at Woodhall Spa had kissed the tall boys for luck before loading them. Now those kisses are falling from the sky. The first bomb misses by 50 yards, sending up a geyser of earth. The second strikes the eastern shaft dead center. It punches through the thin crust of topsoil, burrows deep, and then nothing. A heartbeat of silence. Then the earth erupts. A thunderous detonation rips through the bedrock, collapsing galleries like a house of cards. Lights shatter, screams echo through ceilings as they cave in. Dust chokes every corridor. Hundreds are buried alive in an instant. Coinder staggers through the darkness, flashlight beam cutting through swirling debris. "Keep moving, to the western shaft." But the damage is catastrophic. Rail lines are twisted like pretzels. Gun tubes lie bent and useless. The ventilation system is gone. Air turns foul within minutes. And still the bombs keep coming. As the final tall boy detonates, the entire hillside seems to sigh and sink. From the air, Cheshire watches the fortress disappear under a cloud of dust. "I think we've done it," he says quietly. "Mission complete. No more bombs tonight." Deep below, survivors claw their way through rubble toward faint daylight. Marcel Dupont emerges blinking into the summer sun with his cigarette paper map still hidden in his boot. The England gun is dead. But the message hasn't reached Hitler yet. And when those reconnaissance photos finally land on his desk, his world will crack, just like the tunnels beneath Mimiex. What will he do when he sees his ultimate weapon reduced to rubble? The photographs that broke the Führer. July 9, 1944. Wolfschanze, East Prussia, 3:47 a.m. A single lamp burns in the map room. The air is stale with cigar smoke and sleepless dread. Adolf Hitler sits hunched over the heavy oak table, uniform unbuttoned, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot from another night of amphetamines and maps. In front of him lies a thin manila folder marked Geheim, augenblicklich dem Führer vorzulegen, secret, to be presented to the Führer immediately. An adjutant, SS Sturmbannführer Otto Gunsche, stands rigid at the door, not daring to speak. Hitler flips the folder open. Glossy 20 by 25 centimeter reconnaissance prints spill out like playing cards from hell. The first image, Mimiex before the raid, 2 neat camouflage domes, railway lines crisp and orderly, ventilation shafts clearly visible. The second, Mimoyeks now, a moonscape. The eastern dome has vanished into a crater the size of a city block. The western dome is a collapsed bowl, its concrete roof pancaked 3 meters down. Rail tracks jut into the air like snapped bones. No movement, no smoke even. Just silence carved into French chalk. Hitler stares. Seconds stretch into minutes. Gunsche later swears he heard the ticking of the wall clock like gunshots. Then the whisper, almost childlike, "Das ist nicht möglich." This is not possible. He shoves the photos aside and snatches the accompanying report. RAF Bomber Command, 6 July 1944. 617 Squadron. 12 tall-boy bombs dropped. 11 direct hits or near misses. Estimated 300 to 400 workers and technicians killed instantly. All 25 planned gun tubes destroyed or irreparably buried. Projected operational date no longer applicable. His hand trembles so violently the paper rattles. Speer is summoned by telephone at 4:12 a.m. He arrives pale, still in bedroom slippers, to find Hitler pacing in circles, muttering the same phrase over and over. They knew exactly where to strike. How did they know? Speer tries to speak, but Hitler cuts him off, voice rising to a scream that echoes down the concrete corridors. "I gave you everything. Steel from the Panzer divisions, explosives meant for the Atlantic Wall, slave labor, and in one night, one single night, the England gun is gone." He sweeps the photos off the table. They flutter to the floor like dead leaves. For a moment, the room is silent, except for Hitler's breathing, ragged, Speer frozen, Gunsche staring at the wall as if it might save him. Then quieter, almost to himself. "I believed in this weapon. I needed this weapon." He sinks into the chair, head in his hands. Speer notices the Führer's left hand twitching uncontrollably, the tremor that has worsened since Stalingrad, now a violent spasm. Speer attempts salvage. "Mein Führer, the V-2 is still on schedule. Peenemünde has recovered." "Recovered?" Hitler's laugh is bitter, hollow. "The British bombed Peenemünde because we let them. Now they bomb Mimoyeks before we fire a single shell. They are inside our minds, Speer, inside my mind." He gestures at the scattered photographs. "Look at it. My vengeance, reduced to a hole in the ground." The silence returns, heavier now. Outside, dawn creeps through the pine forest, but inside the bunker it feels like perpetual midnight. At 5:30 a.m., Hitler dictates a terse order. All remaining resources for multi-chamber guns are to be terminated immediately. The surviving engineers at Mimoyeks, those few who crawled out alive, are to be reassigned to V-2 assembly. No reprisals, no speeches, just quiet cancellation. Later that morning, in a staff conference, he barely mentions the disaster. Only once, when Admiral Dönitz pleads for more steel for U-boats, does Hitler snap, "Steel? I poured rivers of steel into the ground for a weapon that never fired. There is no more steel." The words hang in the air like a confession. In the ruined tunnels of Mimoyeks, French forced laborers emerge blinking into daylight, guarded by confused Wehrmacht troops who no longer know what they are guarding. One prisoner, Marcel Dupont, limps past a shattered gun tube and quietly tears up his hidden map. It is no longer needed. The Allies have already won this particular war. And somewhere above the channel, Leonard Chaser climbs out of his Lancaster at RAF Woodhall Spa, lights a cigarette, and stares at the sunrise without triumph. only the grim knowledge that tomorrow there will be another target, another race, another nightmare buried in concrete and chalk. Because the real weapon, the one Hitler finally grasps in that lamplit room, was never the V-3 at all. It was time, and time no longer belonged to the Third Reich.
The silence that followed. July 10th, 1944. The war rolls on, but something has changed. In the shattered galleries of Mimoyek, the echoes finally fade. Rescue teams pick through the rubble for days, pulling out broken bodies and twisted steel. Of the 25 planned gun tubes, only fragments remain. August Konders, face caked in dust, stands at the edge of the main crater and stares down into what was once his masterpiece. No anger, no tears, just a hollow acceptance. He folds his blueprints, tucks them under his arm, and walks away without a word. He will spend the rest of the war on lesser projects, a brilliant mind quietly shelved. Far to the east, in the Wolfschanze, the V-3 is never mentioned again in Hitler's presence. Staff officers learn quickly, bring up Mimoyek, and watch the Führer's eyes glaze over with something darker than rage: defeat. The order terminating the project is filed away in a drawer, stamped and forgotten. Resources trickle back to the V-2 lines, to jet fighters, to anything that might still claw victory from the jaws of collapse. But everyone feels it. The wonder weapons, the secret miracles that were supposed to reverse the tide, are failing one by one. Albert Speer watches the erosion up close. In his memoirs years later, he will write of these weeks as the moment the Reich's technical arrogance finally cracked. He had bet everything on weapons that would arrive too late, or not at all, he confesses. The V-3 was meant to be the simplest, the most unstoppable. A gun needs no guidance system, no fragile electronics, just physics and concrete, and even that proved beyond reach. Across the Channel, Londoners never learn how close they came to a new kind of hell. No headlines scream of the England gun. No victory parades celebrate the tall boys that buried it. Intelligence keeps the secret tight. Even most RAF crews are told only that they, quote, hit a heavy gun emplacement, unquote. Leonard Cheshire returns to operations, earns his Victoria Cross months later over other targets, and carries the memory quietly. Barnes-Wallis moves on to the even larger Grand Slam bomb, shaking the earth at Bielefeld Viaduct and U-boat pens. The men who flew that night in July simply mark it down as another mission completed. In the end, the V-3 fires exactly 0 shells in anger. A smaller site at Lampaden in Germany attempts a handful of test shots against liberated Luxembourg in late 1944. Short-range, inaccurate, more propaganda than threat. They cause minor damage and are silenced within weeks. The dream of raining hundreds of shells an hour on London dies forever in the chalk hills of northern France. As Allied armies surge across Normandy and into Paris, the ruins of Mimoyek are liberated without fanfare. French civilians wander the site, kicking at chunks of concrete, wondering what monstrous thing was being born here. Today the craters are graphed over, the tunnels sealed for safety. A small museum nearby telling the story to visitors who walk the quiet paths and try to imagine the roar that never came. And somewhere in the long retreat of the 1,000-year Reich, Adolf Hitler carries the weight of one more shattered illusion. The man who once believed he could bend history with sheer will stares at maps that grow smaller every day, fronts collapsing, cities burning, and knows, deep down, where denial can no longer reach, that the war is slipping away not with a bang, but with the quiet thud of a tall boy burying his final hope beneath a French hillside. The England gun never spoke, and in its silence the end began.